On behalf of the motion picture industry, welcome to the world of home video entertainment.
The recent wave of blockbuster nostalgia is kind of odd. It's kind of at a weird point, I guess, because all of the Alaskan blockbuster locations, which were some of the few left in the country, have closed, and now there's only one Blockbuster store open in Bend, Oregon. And there's a lot of news stories. There's I think a documentary in the mix about Blockbuster, and it's all of this Blockbuster nostalgia. Of course, the Bend, Oregon, it's a good story and everything, and that's why it's still, that's why you're seen in so many little places, but. It makes me kind of sad because it's almost kind of like millennial nostalgia. It's the beginnings of millennial nostalgia, because a lot of people that are writing these stories are people who were like born in 1990, 1989. They're getting into their mid-20s, right? Mid, early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. And maybe they went to a Blockbuster when they were like 5 years old in 2001 or something, and now the stores are over. It's over, and and it makes me sad because when there's all of this adulation about Blockbuster and the misty-eyed days of Blockbuster. And when I was a teen, I was growing up in the 90s. Everybody hated Blockbuster. Blockbuster sucked. Blockbuster was known as the big corporate baddie who were putting the mom and pop stores out of business. And so nobody liked Blockbuster. If you were a film fan in the mid-90s, one of your things was, it was like burning your draft card, burn your Blockbuster card, and come to the mom and pop video store, the real stuff, And so it's very funny to see all of these film fans and these enlightened cinephiles, these young people who have no idea of the hate and vitriol that was lobbed against Blockbuster in the 90s. The fact that they only and every once in a while you'll see a comment from a guy in his mid-30s, late 30s, or older. And he's like, "Hey, the Blockbuster sucked." They have the promotional stuff from the 90s. They got that marketing message from the mom and pop. Oh, Blockbuster sucks. The young kids are drowning us out, though. The young kids are like, nostalgia, Blockbuster, all of this stuff. Blockbuster, yeah, I had that message. You'd read, the articles in Gore Zone and Fangoria and Film Thread about how Blockbuster sucked and whatever. But also, when you went to the Blockbuster, this negative promotion about Blockbuster was that they only carried family-friendly videos. They caused distributors to censor and cut their videos, and they only carried censored versions of the movies. That's why everybody hated Blockbuster. That's why the cinephiles hated Blockbuster, because it kind of got a rep as they are family-friendly, they're Disney-fied, they will only carry bowdlerized, messed up, censored versions of the movies. And that's kind of partially true in a way. They did press a lot of people. There were a lot of distributors who had such market pressure because a Blockbuster sale was so big to release a censored version of their video and put it in a Blockbuster, okay? So, and that began the era of the rated R versus unrated versus, but that really was few and far between. I think that was much ado about nothing when you look back at it. And really, when you went into the Blockbuster stores, it was true that when Blockbuster went to town, they put a lot of the mom and pop stores out of business. Right? But when you went into the Blockbusters, what you would find is that very frequently Blockbuster would either put the mom and pop out of business and buy their tapes, buy their stock, or Blockbuster would just buy the mom and pop themselves, just buy them out. And along with that, buy their tape stock. So what would happen here is you went to a Blockbuster, and very frequently you would see a lot of weird tapes. I mean, toward the mid 90s and late 90s, you'd go into Blockbuster and you would start seeing like weird VHS, all kinds of obscure VHS. And so I used to be an anti-Blockbuster person, and then I went over into the next town over, which was in Pensacola, Florida, and we had a gigantic Blockbuster there. We probably had a few main ones, but in the early to mid 90s, the main Blockbuster location was right across from Cordova Mall, and now they've changed it. It's something else. But even though it's a different type of company, you can see if you drive by, it's this big, it's a Blockbuster building. It's a Blockbuster building. I mean, you can look at it on the map and you're like, oh, that's a Blockbuster building. It's in front of a Five Guys right now, and some of all that place has changed. There used to be a Ritz Camera right next to it, and that's gone, and I think. And a lot of stuff's changed there. I went over that Blockbuster, and it was like a revelation. There were all these weird stuff. I mean, for the first time, I could rent The Killer, John Woo's The Killer. They had all these obscure horror movies. They had... specifically, I was the first place I rented Tom Savini's Scream Greats there, and I also rented I didn't rent it, but I just saw it, the Gorgon Video Magazine, and Tarkovsky's Solaris. I rented that there. There was so many obscure tapes, which I'm assuming they got from a mom and pop, and now they're in Blockbuster stock. So very frequently when you went to, the downside was that, Blockbuster would go into a place, they would use their predatory, pricing to price out all the mom and pops. Yes. They'd get the mom and pop tapes, so you'd still be able to rent. You'd be able to rent really obscure movies if you dug into the back catalog, the VHS back catalog, when Blockbuster stocked VHS. If you went to deep catalog, whoa, you could pick out some really obscure European art house stuff that you just could not get anywhere else. You could get out of Blockbuster because they had kind of consolidated all of this mom and pop tape stock. And it was there available. Now, in the early 2000s, that kind of went away, because DVD came in, and a lot of chains, Blockbuster, Movie Gallery, a lot of these chains started putting up their VHS for sale, getting rid of them, selling them to who knows what, and going all DVD, retrofitting all DVD, and it became a little bit generic. The Blockbusters became a heck of a lot more generic. You still got some interesting catalog films. Like, if you wanted to rent THX 1138, if you wanted to rent, you could rent, if you wanted to rent, and there was some also stuff that you couldn't find anywhere else. Obscure horror films, if you wanted to rent that Fred and Ray werewolf movie. For a long time, you could only get that at Blockbuster, that Paul Naschy Fred and Ray werewolf movie. They did a custom deal with Blockbuster. Late fees, people go on and on about late fees. I never really had that much a problem with late fees. Okay. I don't really, I think people forget how horrible and how not so horrible the late fees were. I maybe had paid, one or two late fees in my entire, 20 plus years of renting VHS. Oh my God, it must have been over 20 years renting VHS. I was renting VHS in the early 90s. Well, my parents were renting VHS. I was instructing them on what to watch. But very, very soon, it wasn't really a driver's license that I was looking forward to as a kid. It was like, a video rental license. It was a video rental card. That was what I was looking forward to. That just shows you my as soon as I could drive, I would be driving to all these obscure video stores, which Blockbuster didn't. In Pensacola, Blockbuster did not put all of the obscure video stores out of service. There were still a few of them open up into the late 90s. There was one real obscure video store, and then Hollywood Video came in around 97, 98, and they opened the first Hollywood Video, and they opened about 2 or 3 Hollywood Videos. As far as 3, I think there were 3 main ones in Pensacola. Blockbuster bloomed out and opened up, Blockbuster on every block. It was just the overbuilding of Blockbuster, really. I mean, when they were centralized to that one main location in Pensacola that had everything, that was great. They kind of spread themselves a little thin, and that main store in Pensacola got a little bit thin. And then, the proliferation of DVD and all of that stuff. And then Blockbuster eventually kind of petered out. I think many people I do have nostalgia for video rental and Blockbuster. I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact, especially film fans, are waking up to the fact that renting a movie for, especially a deep catalog movie that was only like $2 or $3, or depending upon your area, $4 to rent, and doing that maybe a couple times a week, renting the movies that you really want to watch, is a lot better than paying $8, $10, $15 a month for a Netflix subscription, which doesn't have all the movies that you want. So you gotta subscribe to Hulu, you gotta subscribe to Filmstruck, you gotta look on YouTube. So by the time you have this added up, you're like maybe $30 a month, $35 a month in subscriptions. You gotta maybe juggle around some free trials to get what you want to watch, and and then the free trial ends, and you're being billed $5, $10, $15. Shudder, Filmstruck, how many subscription services can you just to get these specific films that are only available here, they're only available there. With a Blockbuster or a group of video stores that had a free rental card, and remember the early days of video rental, you had to pay a yearly or sometimes a monthly fee to a video club fee, and that kind of very quickly went away when people were like, come on, I can't do that. They'd have a fee sometimes with not even a free rental a month. It'd just be, that seemed like that would have been a good model, like the Netflix model in real time. Like, you got to pay $15 a month, but you get to rent 2 or 3 catalog movies a week. I don't think everybody was really that smart to think about that. I guess the overhead of a physical brick and mortar store is such that that model may not have been as profitable. But maybe at the end they should have just tried that. They should have gone for it. I mean, I think they were trying to do something like that with the Blockbuster online service, which was kind of mail order, which was kind of video on demand, which was kind of go into the store and get whatever you want and return anything anywhere. Mail order. It was a muddled way of trying to deal with Netflix, and it was more so just a way of bleeding money. That's what it seemed to me. I don't even remember the whole Blockbuster. Maybe a few people were signed up for that service and were able to get some quality out of it. But by that time, everybody was going to Netflix. By that time, and the video files were already just buying their movies directly from Amazon, and just, bypassing the whole rental thing totally. So, subscribing to 3 or 4 video on demand services a month is going to add up a hell of a lot more than just, going down to the local Blockbuster or Blockbusters and just renting a couple movies and really almost paying the same amount a month, maybe $5, $10 in rental fees a month versus $15, $30 more in subscription service fees. So it's not so. If you're just a casual user who wants to just Netflix and chill, who wants to just kind of browse around, doesn't really care what they watch, okay, it's like new television. You can just kind of get on it, and it's maybe a lot less expensive, rather. But I think for film fans, it's not the best bargain because Netflix doesn't have all the catalog titles. Hulu doesn't have it all. This is, if you want to watch The Outer Limits, you got to subscribe to Hulu, but it's not on Netflix, and it's not here, it's not there, TV, I think, especially, I think people were getting into being able to rent episodes And that, when I go into the local video stores here in Austin, Texas, like we have I Love Video and Vulcan Video, and even the next in the years, the last couple of years, Vulcan Video and I Love Video, they used to each have 2 locations. Vulcan Video had 2 stores. I Love Video had 2 stores. So there are 4 video rental stores in the Austin area, and they've consolidated. They've both closed one of their stores. I think for many reasons. I think for the high price of rent in the Austin area. A lot of other. So now they're just 2 video stores in the Austin area. 2 real big video stores. Vulcan Video, which has a bunch of stuff. I Love Video, which is a little more the hipper, the more Austin, the more 2 levels. It's kind of a little more cooler, and they have, so between them you can get pretty much any movie you want, and TV shows. I think what I was going to say is that people are really into going to rental for TV series and TV shows, and that's a big thing. Which to binge watch a TV series, if you don't have a subscription to these providers, it's great to go in and just rent a stack of DVDs and just binge watch it in one weekend. So Blockbuster nostalgia. I think millennial nostalgia, people who are in this virtual world, who grew up in it and maybe have some kind of notion that at one point there were video rental stores. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times with Blockbuster. They did have some policies where they were like, oh, we can't show this type of movie. We can't have it in a store. But also they stocked some really weird, wacky stuff in their stores. And European art house, Eurocult, obscure, Gorgon, MPI, VHS, Vestron, obscure stuff. And I do have fond memories of Blockbuster, despite all the vitriol of the if you were a 90s kid, you were like, Blockbuster censors movies. Whether that was really true or not, it kind of wasn't really true. They stocked a lot of stuff. They stocked kid-friendly stuff, and they pushed that. They had that image. But if you went kind of behind the scenes, you could find some really wild, wacky, strange stuff at Blockbuster. So did we lose something? Yeah, I think with video rental, you did lose a lot, I think.